It's here, the ultimate gear battle. Coke versus Pepsi, the Yankees versus the Red Sox, peas versus carrots. Huh? So you're ready to plunk down some hard-earned cash on the AXE FX 3 or the Kemper Profiler, but it's not like you can walk into the local guitar center and test them out, try whatever you want and see what you like better. You kind of have to rely on videos and samples from people to see what works best. So I'm going to put together a concise but thorough video for you that explains the workflow of each unit, goes into the software that comes with them, how you program them and use them in the studio as well as in a live setting, and basically how the workflow works best for you. Before I do that though, I put together a quick clip of 3 different types of sounds. I did one riff playing clean through a model of the Roland Jazz Chorus 120 through a 212 cabinet. And I've got a mid-gain kind of classic rock clip that's through a Plexi 100 watt and a 4x12 cabinet, and then a high-gain heavy metal clip, which is through the Splawn Nitro and that same 4x12 cabinet as I used on the Plexi. Let's listen to those first. I've labeled them 1 and 2. I'm not saying which is the AXE or the Kemper yet. We'll reveal that at the end. See how you feel about the sounds and what you might like better, and then we'll get into the details. So we're here at the desk now, and you can see I've got the Kemper Rig Manager loaded. Now, you don't need to use the Rig Manager. You can just use the sounds that are inside the Kemper stored in there and just use the knobs to turn through sounds. But if you do that, you are definitely missing out on a lot of what this unit has to offer. Now, I've got it hooked up to my computer via USB, and it stays here. I'm only using it in the studio. So what I have open on this screen is a list of all the profiles that are stored on the unit right now. So the internal memory of the unit, which I have, 267 of them stored in there. So if you were to take that out on the road and use it live, then those are the sounds you would have with you. So you can move things in and out. And as you can see, you can sort these things by name, author, instrument, the gain profile, how much gain is on it, if you want to go from clean sounds to heavy distorted sounds. I like to put comments on my sounds, mark some of them as favorites. They show the amp manufacturer, amp name, all the things you can think of here. Now the real power of this thing, as you can see, is that there are a lot more rigs than just what came on the unit. And so if you're connected to the internet and you have this software loaded, you have the largest number of sounds in what's called the Rig Exchange. And then as you can see here at this, as of the time I'm recording this, 14,169 sounds. These are profiles that are made by individual people. They use the profiler, they go through the steps of hooking the mic up to their amp, and it runs a bunch of sounds through the amp and creates a profile of it. And then they upload them to the Rig Exchange for everybody to use. So if you're looking for, say, a 5150 amp, you put that in here and you can see all the 5150s that someone's have sampled, and just start trying them out until you find the one you like. And they're rated, some of them. You can see there's crowd voting on it and whatnot. And you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of good ones. There's going to be some bad ones that you don't like, that for whatever reason they weren't great profiles. The levels will change a lot. But you dig around and you find the one you like, and then from there, if you want to load it into your unit and you don't want to just have to go to the Rig Exchange for it, you can right-click to export it. You save it on your hard drive. you go back to your local library or your profiler and you import the sound. So local library are the sounds for me that I have stored. So I got to clear the search out there because you can search your own library as well. Those are the sounds I have stored on the computer rather than just on the unit itself. And then they have all these things called rig packs, which are the rigs that well-known producers and guitar players and people that Kemper has worked with have put up for everyone to use. Like Michael Wagner, for instance, or Ola England, everybody knows him from YouTube. He's got a bunch of cool sounds on here that he's profiled from his own equipment. And as you can see, there's a number of different ones. What I like best about this are the bass profiles, actually. There are a number of great bass profiles in here. And for a guy like me who does a lot of different kinds of music, I go from like fusion jazz to hard rock to blues rock to pop songs. I use all different kinds of bass sounds, and rather than just dialing in one, I need to have them, a bunch of different ones at my disposal, and this is a great way to do it. So if you have this hooked up into your studio full-time like I do, and you have all these sounds available, you're never going to run out of the sounds that you need or the sounds you're searching for. You're always going to find something. Let's move on to taking a look at the AXE FX now. Now with the AXE FX software, you see it's quite a bit different. We have something called AXE Edit. And rather than being a giant repository of sounds that you can grab online, this just highlights the sounds that you have loaded into the unit. If you see here, I've got all these presets. That's the stuff that came with it. As I get toward the end here, I have ones that I've made for my specific instruments or for specific sounds that I want. And the power here is in that the editing features. With this software, this is the kind of thing where you're going to put together the sounds that you want. You're going to put them in a chain. As you can see, I've got different effects here, and I can move where the effects are in the chain. I can have the delay after the reverb if I want. Move it over to here. Do whatever I want with it. I select which amp I want here, so there's a list of all the amps that they have modeled the circuitry of, 269 of them in this case. I can take any amp and put it in any cabinet I want, and I can actually have up to 4 cabinets running at the same time with different mics and running them different areas of the stereo spectrum. The number of cabinets is enormous. You can see as I go through here, and that's because the reason there's so many of them is because you have one cabinet mic'd all kinds of different ways with different types of mics, because the mic has a huge effect on the sound. In fact, I'll show you here. Here's a 4x12 with an SM57 in it. If I do that same thing, the Cali amp, and I go to a 121 amp, quite a bit different. So there's a lot of playing around to find what you want, or maybe you know of a sound that you like that you've had or that a famous artist has used, and you figure out what equipment they used. You go in here and you find the analog of that equipment, or the analog's probably the wrong word. You find the version of the equipment that they've modeled. You put it together and you build your own patch from it. The other thing that's available are scenes within each patch. So in this case, I have, as you can see, 8 different scenes in this Bogner patch. So I went from the rhythm. I have a lead patch. Just added a little delay to it. I go over to the next scene, the flanger rhythm. And so on and so forth. So you can have up to 8 different scenes. If we're using this live, basically it works in banks of groups of 5. So sounds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the switch. And each one of those can have 8 different scenes. So then you can just go up or down through the scenes when you're playing live if you want to go between lead sounds and rhythm sounds. You can even use the foot switches to turn on and off effects, so you can just add distortion, add compression, add flanger, whatever, and hit it like effects pedals you would in a normal amp and pedal situation. But what this offers you really is much more of the ability to tweak every sound and change things out and even change the circuitry. You see with the amp here, you have what they call the authentic front, which is all the controls that are on the actual amp, and then ideal adds and controls that aren't really on the real amp, but you might want to use to edit it. I can go out and swap out the tubes from the preamp. It's the level of granularity and the types of things you can change on this you can become overwhelmed with the number of options pretty quickly. So it's fun to mess around with. It's probably better going into it knowing what it is that you like from various pieces of equipment you've read about or used before or heard, and then building off of that and then tweaking and messing with it from there. As far as the front face of it goes, the screen on the new AXE 3 is quite good. The editing features on it, it's pretty easy to use. It's not, whereas the Kemper, the knobs are laid out more like a real amp. This is more of a digital kind of world that you'd be working within. But I think you'll find it quite easy to use with very little learning curve. So that's an overview of how the AXE FX software works when plugged in via USB. Obviously, there are millions of little minute details we can go into with it, but really just what I wanted to do on this video was give you an overview of how it looks and how it works and how the workflow works, and hopefully that allows you to see whether or not it's a fit for you and this looks like the kind of unit you want to use. So there you have a very broad strokes overview of how each one of the units works when plugged into the studio. And I hate to kind of lay them out on a gear battle and say that they're a draw, but as I alluded to in the beginning when I said Pepsi versus Coke, these things are really just, they're both excellent units, and it's a matter of taste and the way you like to work with something and interact with it, what makes sense to you. If I could kind of highlight the differences in them that I see from using both over a good portion of a year, actually a little more than a year now, I feel that the Kemper, from a sonic standpoint, has more of what I would call an ampy quality to it, in that guitar players very much like to plug into an amp, turn it up very loud, and feel the air getting pushed. And it has that kind of visceral quality to it. And I feel that a lot of the rigs on the Kemper have that quality to them, where when you're listening to it unaccompanied, it sounds like an amp in a room that's pretty loud, and you can get that visceral kind of almost analog feel to it. And as far as what's available on it, it's a lot like walking into a giant warehouse full of amps and cabinets and everything you could possibly imagine, where you just find the one that you want, plug into it, and go. With the AXE FX, I find the sounds to be a little bit more what I would call pristine, clean. They sound more like what you would get in the studio when you've compressed and EQ'd them to fit into a mix better. So now, of course, when you plug the Kemper sounds in, you're going to do that anyway when you record. But the AXE FX kind of has the sounds that are more like that right from the get-go. Now, I'm not saying which one is better or worse. Again, it's a matter of preference. I'm assuming this is the result of the different methodology the two units use in creating sounds. With the Kemper, the sounds are made with the microphone put up to the speaker cabinet, and then the Kemper sends a series of sounds through the cabinet to do the actual modeling. So it's always based on output. It's from the outside of the amp. With the AXE FX, they are trying to recreate the actual circuitry and the electronics and tubes of the amps and basically give you the sound from the inside out. Although, of course, with the cabinets, they're still taking what they call IRs, which are mic'd samples of sounds out of a cabinet. But as far as the circuitry of the amps and effects go, those are not done from a waveform or from the sound. They are done from the inside out through the circuitry. Now, with the usage of the AXE FX, getting into it is more a tweaker's paradise. And that sounds like I'm talking about a meth head, but I'm not. What I mean by that is, for the guy who would walk into that same warehouse, but take the amp off the shelf, pull the tubes out, hotwire the amp, mess with it, take effects on a pedal board and put them in all kinds of screwy configurations that you wouldn't think of. It's more of something that you get into the really granular kind of customization of each one of the pieces of the sound that you're working with, rather than just a plug and go type of situation. Now, of course, again, with both of them, there's quite a bit of customization you can do, but the AXE lends itself more to that kind of, again, tweaker personality, and the Kemper is more of the guy who just wants to try all the equipment that's already out there. Now, as far as using them live, I talked about the AXE FX a little bit when I was showing you the software and how the pedal board works through scenes and turning effects on and off. Kemper also offers the same thing. They have their own pedal board and it works similarly. Whichever one you go with, you're not going to get confused by the board. Neither one of them is really deficient in any way. They're both great units live. Now, before I forget, the little sound clips that I showed with the numbers 1 and 2 on them, just for your edification, each one that was number 1 was the AXE FX, and each one with the number 2 was the Kemper unit. So I hope this kind of overview helped you get a better idea if you're looking to buy one or the other of the units, which one you might want. Of course, we could do hours and hours on each one and just even groups of sounds, and I'll probably come back and do more videos just highlighting certain blocks of amps or profiles in each one of them for people who really want to see more of the details of each unit. But what I wanted to do here was just kind of keep it to 10-15 minutes and give you the overview speech of what they each do and hopefully help you make an informed decision if you're going to get one or the other. So as always, guys, if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below and keep making great music. I'll see you next time. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.